What's up, you guys? This is Adam Gillespie with Rants and Sweaty Calves coming at you with yet another video. And yes, I'm covering the second episode of Velma, the god-awful TV show that was blessed to us by the tyrants of horrifically idiotic mainstream media outlets. Oh, how splendid they are to curse our eyes with this trash. At least it's going to get people good views on their channels. That's one benefit to this stupid show. Nevertheless, let's go ahead and cover this. I'm going to be covering the second episode, but I do want to highlight something really quick. 47%. The critics have been desperately attempting to keep this thing at a steady 50% on this show and the ratings for so long, and I finally got to see it dip down below 47%. It's been dipped down multiple times in the past, but now I actually get to record a video of it having been dipped down 47% or so. So this is a really, really cool thing for me to see. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get into the episode, but I'm going to do it in 3 parts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to review one plot of the episode at a time. Yes, there are 3 plots going on in this 25-minute episode of Velma, and none of them are good. We'll go ahead and cover quite possibly one of the worst and most cringy plots of the group. We're going to cover the Shaggy/Norville trying to sell his kidney for $500 to get a blackmail money on Velma. So what happens is the show opens up with a recap, and Velma, along the way of the show, Velma gets caught in this web of needing to prove Fred's innocence to get a certain amount of money, or because this, that, or the other. And as the show goes on, she wants to learn more about her mother and her mother's case file, her mother's cold case file. So she goes to Daphne, who is the daughter of 2 lesbian cops, to try and get the case file. Now, Daphne says, "Sure, I'll give it to you for $500. Which seems reasonable if you're going to break the freaking law to such an extreme, severe degree. But before she goes to anyone else, Velma travels to Norville's house, breaks in essentially, and then just asks, "Hey, can I take your stuff and sell it and make money off of it?" to the parents of the home, until she goes to Norville, where he's streaming in front of a bunch of people and he's doing his Norville's Snacks, which is just a terrible name. Make something interesting like Sweaty Calves or Az from Hill vs. Babyface. So yeah, that's how that opens up. And what happens is she asks him if he has $500 that he can spare. Obviously, he doesn't have $500 he can spare. He's a teenager talking about snacks on Twitch. He's probably not going to be making that much money. And then, Norville begs Velma not to say anything while he's on stream, because the last time she said something about an Indian restaurant dessert, he got canceled. She, out of a complete lack of care for the man's livelihood and the man's possible future in this industry, decides she's going to say something derogatory towards an Indian cuisine that gets him canceled by his subs all over again. And right before this, she also, what was it? There was something really, really stupid. I know that's really kind of a nonsensical thing to say in this instance, because everything this show does is stupid. But she was pretty stupid in regards to everything. Yeah, it just slipped out of my head. Yeah, it's like I can't retain much information from each of these episodes due to how dull, boring, and completely idiotic they are. Nevertheless, Norville decides, you know what, I'm going to try to get that $500 for Velma. So what does he do? He doesn't get a job. No, that would be crazy. Why would he possibly get a job and work to make money? Why would Velma possibly get a job and work to make money? It's not like she was just gifted one in the beginning of the first episode that could possibly make her more affordable, make it more affordable for her to pay out $500 for a freaking case file. No. Instead of going to work and clocking in and clocking out and, doing something on the grind, what she does is she goes to Norville and asks for $500 from him, hoping that he'll just hand over $500 because he probably knows that he's a simp who would do anything for her for no apparent reason. And because Norville wants to give her the money and possibly date her at the same time, he says, you know what, I'm going to find a way to make that $500. And he says this stuff out loud. He says, I'm going to find a way to make that $500. That way, I can give it to Velma and blackmail her into liking me. Which, I don't know when that's ever been effective. And he says this, mind you, on stream. He says this on stream. Meaning that everyone who was still watching just heard him admit that he wanted to blackmail a person that he claims to care about into dating him for $500. Meaning that he just outed himself as a manipulative prick. Not just to the audience, but to his fictional audience on the Twitch stream. This guy's career is over. Moving on, Norville goes and he tries to find multiple ways to make $500 that are really, really effective. Starts by trying to sell a sword that he has for no reason. When that doesn't work, he gets approached by someone who might want to sell his kidney. So he goes, hey, you know what, I'm not into house flipping, but I'll take the kidney. That's almost verbatim what goes on in the joke. And he backs out of the kidney thing, and then a bounty hunter shows up, and Norville almost kills the bounty hunter for another $500. And then his fans, who are all a bunch of junkies, come out of nowhere and say, hey, don't do that. And he stops, and he says, you know what, I'm just going to try to win Velma over by being myself. So he goes, buys a limo. How did he get the money for that? No one knows. He doesn't have $500 to spare, but he can somehow rent a limo. Gets a tux, bouquet of flowers, and a top hat. And then he sees Velma and Daphne making out at the end of the episode, and he goes, oh man, now being myself won't even be enough. And it wasn't before, dude. It wasn't before. Velma, the absolutely horrendous prick of a person, said, I don't like this guy because he likes me too much. I'd rather try to chase after Fred, who doesn't even know I exist, and continuously mocks people who look less attractive than himself, or less attractive than his 15-year-old Asian lesbian mom having possibly bisexual, whorish girlfriend. Velma's an absolutely horrendous individual. I don't know why anyone would have any sort of relationship integrity or desire to date her at all. Moving on from that, that's the entirety of the Norville plot in this episode. We also have the Velma and Daphne selling drugs plot. Really, basically what goes on in that plot is that we find out that Velma is actually such an unlikable bint that she can't even sell drugs to drug addicts. And it's agreeable, because she literally can't help herself from insulting individuals that she meets and prejudging them before she even has a chance to understand who they are, what they're going through, or why it is that they act the way they act. Instead, she desperately decides she's going to pick at anything she possibly can to make people feel bad about themselves. And really, the show tries to give an explanation. Is it because you don't want to get too close to somebody and then get hurt, so you feel like it would be better to just not get close to anybody at all? No. That's not the reason why. The reason why is because she is miserable and she wants everyone to be just as miserable as her. So she tries her best to drag people down and make themselves feel like absolute garbage because she knows that that's what she feels like. And there's no apology for that in this show. There's no reason for her to act that way. But she continuously degrades everyone that she comes in contact with, and has no remorse for people who have already died, and hates Fred so much so that she is willing to completely neglect the possibility of his innocence simply because he's white and has a tiny dong. Yeah, Velma, the pinnacle of virtuous characteristics in this show, is absolutely dog water and a completely unlikable bint. Moving on from that, which is pretty much the extent of what happens in that plot. I mean, there is also the whole Velma and Daphne wind up making out because Velma has a panic attack, and so Daphne forces a kiss on her. Again, these are all 15-year-old kids, by the way. Everyone in this show is 15 years old or so. Really, really ridiculous when you think about it. Moving on from the Velma and Daphne selling drugs to people and Velma being such an unlikable bint that she can't even sell drugs to drug addicts, we have the Velma trying to prove Fred's innocence thing. And there's pretty much nothing in this plot either. Velma says, oh, Fred absolutely did it. He's a white guy with a tiny dong. There's no evidence needed. Remind you, in the first episode, she already made the claim, she already had the bias going in that Fred was a criminal. Because, by her words, she said, you kidding me? If I was a white guy with millions of dollars, I'd kill everyone just to get away with it. Meaning that Velma is an incredibly immoral person. Right off the bat. We open the show up with Fred being dragged out of his house with bullet wounds still in his legs. Now he's walking, and he's just gushing blood, meaning that this kid would probably die within 30 seconds of being put in the squad car. And remember at the end of the first episode how they handcuffed him with his hands behind his back? Yeah, apparently they just kind of carry him out with his hands around their shoulders. So they didn't actually cuff him. They just went down there and probably violated the kid for a couple of seconds before dragging him outside into a cab car with absolutely zero evidence and shooting him in his own house when there was a breaking and entering intruder who actually was committing a crime in the form of Velma. I'm never going to get over that. They shot someone who was the kid of the owner of the house and didn't care to investigate why it was that Velma had broken into Fred's house. They just automatically assumed, oh, Freddy, he must be the bad guy. We see Velma there and she's... Nah. It's so stupid. Nevertheless, the court case gets brought to attention. The lawyer decides they're going to try to play up the childlike innocence of Fred, making him look like an absolute wacko. He has fake eyelashes on, and there's a random rainstorm that happens for about 10 seconds that washes off a lot of the makeup that he has on. And one of his fake eyelashes falls onto his upper lip, and it makes him look kind of like Hitler because he's trying to block out a camera for half a second. So they managed to capture a screenshot of Fred having his hand up, making him look like Hitler. These are absolutely hilarious jokes, people. Why are you not laughing? And it only gets worse. The show goes on. Velma's dad is representing Fred. And so Velma is asked by her dad to go find a way to prove Fred's innocence. And she says, no, he's guilty. He's guilty. He's a white guy with a tiny dong. What are you talking about, Dad? He's guilty. He's white. Only white people are evil. White! And then she sees that he can't even cut his own food and says, oh my gosh, that means that he couldn't have possibly cut off the heads of those little girls that we also know in school. That means he's got to be innocent. So she publicly mocks him inside the courtroom. Instead of actually pointing to actual evidence, she decides to come up with this bullcrap ideology of saying, oh, no. Fred is so incompetent that he can't even cut his own food. How could he possibly cut open the skulls of these girls? Power tools! Even if you're that incompetent and can't grab the blade of a knife the right way, you have these things called power tools. You know, electric saws, hand saws, table saws, miter saws. You got all these different types of saws. Jigsaws, for that matter. I mean, you got portable jigsaws, which work incredibly well at cutting through incredibly thick things. Oh my gosh. Nevertheless, the court case is, people are going, oh my gosh, he couldn't have possibly done it. He's so incompetent, he can't even cut steak. I'm sorry, but if you saw somebody literally grab a knife by the blade and then try to cut something with the handle, you would automatically assume that they're putting on a show or they have an IQ of 3, okay? There's no way that you're going to literally believe any of that. There's no way that you would genuinely believe that somebody can't cut their own freaking food. There's no reason for someone to believe that. And the show tries to make it into a comedy thing like, oh, but he's been so pampered, he can't even cut his food. No. That's not a good enough reason. Say he's got some sort of cerebral palsy. You know, cerebral palsy, where you actually have an issue with holding things, maintaining things, and it's a difficulty to control your actions. But no, that would be picking on the disabled individuals in the community, right? It's not like you can't pick on this or that. Instead, you're just going to pick on rich white guys who probably put in more work and effort than anyone in the writer's room on this show ever did to make themselves a fortune that they can then share with their family. You're going to pick on those kinds of guys and their children, their offspring, and completely neglect the fact that this is a completely idiotic court decision, a completely idiotic idea that has absolutely no merit on how funny it could be if you found a way to work around it and make it actually interesting. It just gets worse and worse the more you think about it. So Fred, because he's upset that people are mocking him, gets so angry that he admits to doing the crime when he actually didn't do the crime. And that's pretty much the show. Those are the 3 plots. Boy, oh boy. This entire show is absolutely trash. And I wish I didn't have to watch it. I mean, I don't, but at the same time, I'm going to, because I'm going to show you guys how absolutely trash these writers have become. And I'm going to highlight all the inconsistencies and illogical fallacies of this stupid, stupid show. Because that's all this is an incredibly stupid show. And once again, I want you guys to realize I didn't bring identity politics into this. I did mention something here and there that was written in there specifically because of the political ideology of the writer. But the main problem with this show, and I want to stress this, the main problem with this show is not the political ideology. It's not the identity politics. It's not that people are acting in the incredibly immoral way that they are. It's that the show is just badly written. The main problem with this show is that it's so infused with absolute garbage that it's hard to tell the difference between this and a dumpster from New Jersey. And even then, I think I'd choose the dumpster from New Jersey because at least there'd be something of value inside that dumpster. You know, like a banana peel skin or a wad of paper. Anything that you could use to burn in a fire and give you warmth at night. Whereas this show is just completely pointless and doesn't deserve any of the attention it's gotten so far, except for the hate. I don't know who greenlit this, but it's absolutely horrendous. And I can't believe that Warner Bros. Is such a freaking idiotic company that they would actually greenlight this show and fire Henry Cavill. I know there's 2 different departments, but you have to be an absolute idiot to do that as a company. David Zaslav, come on, dude. Figure out some way of making sure that you guys can do something that's interesting and profitable at the same time, because if you continue down this road, you're not going to have a company by the end of the year. This is just absolute garbage. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, comment down below your thoughts, share this video out there with your friends, and subscribe and hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss a single video I upload. And also make sure to check me out on all my different socials. I leave links to those in the description below. I hope you guys have a great day and a great rest of the week.